The commodity that wars were waged over and world trade routes were formed around for thousands of years has come back in the spotlight once again with a truly unique venture company, a venture 50 company actually, in Atlas Salt. We're about to take a deep dive into why investors should be taking notice of one of only two publicly traded salt companies in all of North America, and see that the other has amassed a valuation of over $2 billion. The opportunity for Atlas with a valuation of about $175 million is one that you'll want to listen to. In order to do this, I'd like to welcome President Rowland Howe, known as Mr. Salt himself, and CEO Patrick Laracy. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi, Brandon. Good to be here.
Absolutely, and great to have you two as well. Rowland, I'd like to start with yourself because I'd like to start by asking a very simple question that I know is on a lot of investors' minds right now. Why salt? You became president of Atlas in April of last year. The stock price has nearly quadrupled since then. You've accomplished a lot in your career within the salt industry. Why did you choose to get involved with Atlas, and why has salt, the commodity, captured the attention of so many investors recently?
It was an easy decision for me to come to salt because I've had a long career mining, producing, and in the salt business. So, this Great Atlantic Salt Project is really a phenomenal asset. It's a really what we like to describe as advantaged asset. And I used to run the Goderich mine in Ontario on Lake Huron, and I ran that for over 16 years. And we took it as a team. We took it from 3.5 million to over 7.5 million tons annual production, and that is salt that's going to go and de-ice roads all around the Great Lake region. So, the salt, the commodity that we're talking about here, is one that's essential for winter maintenance in the Northeast, U.S. and Canada. It's one that the market is really tight. There's 7 to 10 million tons of salt imported every year into this region. So, those sources are North Africa and Chile. Long, journeys and supply chains. So, our vision is that we can start producing salt on Newfoundland, on the west coast of Newfoundland, a short ship ride to the east coast, and it answers a lot of people's concerns about supply chain. COVID started, Ukraine has really pushed it harder, and everybody's thinking, well, am I secure? Is my supply chain secure for the things that I need? And certainly salt, when it comes to keeping our highways safe in winter, is an absolute requirement. And last winter there was some severe storms that really just exaggerated the issue that if you're not ready, if you don't prepare and you don't clear the roads, it just causes everything to grind to a halt. So, salt is, like you said, wars have been fought over it, and you need it for your body. Your body doesn't make it. We all enjoy it on our food as a flavor enhancer, but the bulk salt business is the one that we're targeting, where it's going to states, municipalities, contractors for winter maintenance.
Yeah, and you brought up numerous important points there, but especially when it comes to supply chain and of essential commodities across all North America, really across the world. That's a massive underline for a lot of these governments right now, and they're wanting to source that closer to home. There's no place better than in Newfoundland and in Canada. So I'd like to start talking more about Newfoundland, but more specifically about Atlas. Now that investors have a better understanding of the why behind investing in salt, I'd like to dive into the unique opportunity of Atlas Salt. For those who are hearing about your story for the first time, what has your team been building over in Newfoundland?
Well, we've got a fantastic salt deposit there. It's called the Great Atlantic Salt Deposit. It's one that Patrick and his team discovered while they were drilling for oil and gas. The geology is great. It's a massive homogeneous deposit, over 1 billion tons of salt there. I mean, salt it is in deposits that just stretch beyond the imagination. I mean, this is a great deposit, and it's close to deep water. There's a port right there. So with salt, with moving bulk in huge quantities, being able to get it onto water and ship it is a real advantage. So the logistical advantages are there. Newfoundland is a very welcoming province. It's a safe province. They're voted recently in the top 10 of provinces for inviting mining and providing for mining. So, we're happy to be there. It's great that it's in Newfoundland, and the location geographically is second to none. What we're proposing is a salt mine, a deep salt mine. And the thing about salt is it's environmentally, the salt mining operation and processing operation is very, very simple. You mine it, crush it, screen it. There's no tailings ponds. There's no chemical processing. There's no real residue. It's, you get it ready and you ship it.
Yeah, and Great Atlantic project, you speak to a lot of brokers and investors recently, especially those who have never heard of salt before, but you start speaking about the logistics of this. You start speaking about the feasibility of this. You start speaking about the fact of the shortfall you're talking about, 7 to 10 million tons a year. It really starts to make sense for people very quickly why this could be such a big deal in that space, or in this space, I should say. And you also spent, I want to go back to this for a moment as well. You spent 10 years running the mine at Goderich. That is for Compass Minerals. And during the time of being there, I believe you started as around $13 a share. It soared to $100 US a share. What's so special about Great Atlantic in terms of maybe comparing it to that Goderich mine, which is obviously one of the largest in North America, but in terms of where you think this could actually go, given your experience of running a mine for so long?
Yeah, I've actually been in the salt industry for over 30 years, and 16 of them was actually running that Goderich mine. That really is the gold standard. It's got great geology. It's on Lake Huron. The shipping all around that region. And when Patrick kind of came to me about this Great Atlantic Salt project, it had all the same DNA that Goderich has, and it just so many advantages that would come into play when we're marketing salt to that East Coast.
Yeah, fantastic. And very excited to continue to hear this, as are a lot of investors. If you just start looking at the boards and all this kind of stuff, there's a lot of momentum there, and there's a lot of interest there as well. But Great Atlantic in and of itself is an incredible opportunity for investors. We just spoke about that. But there's also a massive potential renewable energy play through Fischell's Brooke Salt Dome and other potential salt domes that Atlas has claims to. Patrick, for those of you who are unaware of yourself, but also potentially the salt caverns and how they come into play with renewable energy, can you explain the dividend currently that salt will be giving investors with Fischell's Brooke, while also giving investors an understanding of what Fischell's Brooke is?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. We own the mineral rights to an area called Fischell's Brooke. And in late 2021, we carried out a gravity survey, the first modern digital survey in that area, to confirm the geometry of the Fischell's Brooke salt dome. And it turns out, based on the gravity data, which is kind of the go-to geophysical method for looking for salt deposits, the dome itself is quite large. It exceeds 5 square kilometers in aerial size. We know the salt there is at least 700 meters thick. The existing drilling in the dome itself has never penetrated the base of the salt, so we know it's thicker than that. So it's an appreciable salt dome. We've also located a secondary dome based on gravity data. We call the Fischell's Brooke East. When we acquired these mineral rights, we were looking towards potential fluid storage underground. And over the last couple of years, particularly the last 12 months, hydrogen, of course, is coming to the fore in terms of a energy transition fuel source. And there are many projects around the world which are at the early stages. There's one in Utah which is being developed currently. The U.S. government is a big supporter of that project. It's going to be, I think, one of the first large-scale hydrogen production sites. What we have going in Western Newfoundland is we have potential access to green energy in the form of wind. Newfoundland, particularly the west coast of Newfoundland, is one of the premier unexploited wind opportunities in North America. So if you can couple green energy as the energy source to generate that hydrogen, it's a win-win situation from a clean energy project scenario. Now, where does the storage come in? Anytime you produce energy, you really need a storage facility to balance the production of that energy with the consumption, because the consumption may have seasonality to it, and you got to balance that load. So underground storage is ideal in that situation. There's nothing new about storing gas underground. The technology has been around for over 80 years, commonly used throughout Canada and the rest of the world. So we are going to spin out a brand new company, and we're going to put together a management team and a board that has expertise in underground storage and wind energy and hydrogen. And with that new management team, they will solicit partnerships to utilize that storage, most likely as a key component of a clean energy project.
Yeah, that's fascinating when thinking about that, because I know a lot of friends who are very much into renewable energy, even into hydrogen, and hearing that it can be stored underground using these salt caverns. I don't think many people realize that or know that. And the Biden administration obviously does, because you mentioned that in Utah, they awarded them a $500 million in grant money to make sure that comes into play. So clearly the U.S. is really pushing this. I can only imagine Canada will do the same. When it comes to that dividend for current shareholders, I just want to go back to that point really quickly here. If you are a current shareholder, there's no record date that has been set just yet. It's going to be sometime this year from your communication. How does that process work? I believe it's 25% dividend for all the current shareholders that you're getting this new spin-off company. Can you go over that really quickly?
Yeah, we're currently in the process with our legal team to get that spin-out done as soon as possible. Our AGM is slated for mid-August. A shareholder approval will be required, and we'll be updating the market fairly shortly on how that structure is going to look like. Atlas shareholders will receive shares in SpinCo by virtue of holding shares in Atlas. Atlas Salt itself will retain a very significant piece of SpinCo. And of course, we're bringing in strategic investors to finance SpinCo, which will allow us again to put the proper team in place and to do the geotechnical work that will need to be done to add value to the project and make it attractive to one of those big players looking at a hydrogen project. Hydrogen projects are multi-billion-dollar projects. I mean, these are no fly-by-night operations. These are long-term, major industrial undertakings.
Very exciting. I appreciate that. And for any investor who just needs a little bit more to understand that, pretty much if you own shares in Atlas Salt, get ready, because soon they'll be announced. You're going to own shares of this new SpinCo as well. That can, in and of itself, be a massive, massive opportunity. And well, speaking of investors and speaking of shares, an introduction to a company would never be complete without a quick overview of its share structure and financial health. What does your current capital structure look like, and are you adequately cashed up for the near future as well?
Yeah, we're adequately cashed. We have $7.6 million in the bank. Our expected expenditure on the feasibility study for Great Atlantic Salt is going to come in at around $3.5 million. We have 80 million shares. I'm going to give you approximate numbers. They're always changing. Approximately 80 million shares outstanding. We have over 7 million warrants that remain outstanding. We expect most, if not all, of those will be exercised prior to SpinCo. If so, that will generate another $5 million plus into the treasury. So we're in a very strong financial situation.
Yeah, fantastic to hear, especially with those options and warrants and the money. Obviously, that brings more money into the company as well. Well, gentlemen, I always like to end off our interviews with a very important question. What should investors be excited about coming down the pipeline from Atlas Salt in the coming weeks and months ahead? We just found out everything that has happened to date. What might be happening in the near future? Patrick, I'll start with yourself, and then Rowland, I'll hear from you as well.
Of course, the exciting thing is that we're in the midst of the feasibility study. And part of that is a drilling program to acquire geotechnical information that the engineers will use to design the actual mine. So shareholders can expect to hear more news on that front. But overall, Brandon, sometimes the obvious is worth bearing repeating. And the key thing about the Great Atlantic Salt Deposit is that we're in the middle of the road salt market. So location number one, right? Where we have access to infrastructure. And those two things are incredibly powerful. As well, your listeners should be aware that the salt market is a tendered market. So you bid on contracts from municipalities, as Rowland has pointed out. So that allows us to enter this market. I mean, this is not a market that's locked up. This is a low bid market is going to get those contracts. So we have that fortunate position that not only do we have a great resource in the right location, we have the opportunity to enter the market.
Fantastic. Great to hear. And Ro, I know it's harder as Patrick's already chosen lots of things I'm sure you're excited about as well, but from yourself as well, just leave investors off with one last thing here.
You know, as we explain what we're doing and describe the Great Atlantic Salt Project and the potential for Atlas Salt, the key things are this is very de-risked. I mean, we've tried many ways to not make this work, and it's got so many advantages. I mean, the geology is de-risked, the processing is very simple, we've got the logistics, environmentally it's got a very small footprint. So, you know, as we explain this, there's more and more interest. And you know, last few years, Stone Canyon, they spent $5.2 billion buying up salt mines and salt assets. And, you know, those numbers kind of make people start thinking about what's going on. So we have got a special corporate advisor just to make sure that if Atlas is in any way approached, we've got the right answers, we've got the right information to make the right decision for shareholder value. So that's our focus. We're gonna, we got a great asset. We're gonna produce or have a gold standard of mines here, but all other options are on the table too.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate it very much. We're going to be doing many more of these interviews, diving into more aspects of the company. This was an introductory interview so that investors can have a better understanding of who Atlas Salt is, and of course, the two of you as well. So I'm very excited to have those. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to being able to speak to you again here in the near future as well.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yep, thanks.